Lincoln City Council meeting of March the 2nd, 2015. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a period of silent meditation.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether you're speaking in favor or in opposition to the item. Please spell your name for us. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under second reading. On the second and last meeting of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date, nor planned for a future agenda, and this is not an open meeting night. Teresa, call the first item, please.
Certainly. First will be our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 6.
Anybody who'd like to speak to these items? Staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, if not, we can vote on these items. Items 1 through 3 were introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion? Call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 4 was introduced by Camp.
So moved. Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion? Call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook, Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next would be our public hearing liquor resolutions. This is the application of Mochara LLC, doing business as McFarland & Sons Irish Pub, for a special designated license to cover an area measuring approximately 60 feet by 50 feet at 710 P Street on March 17th, 2015. We do have a correction in the hours. This is to be from 4 p.m. till 11 p.m.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item, please come forward. Great. Come on in.
How you doing? Brian McFarland, BRYAN MCFARLAND, 710 P Street, 68508.
John.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yes, I know we've had some things that came in later on this.
Correct.
As I understand it, there's a proposal with you and then the other Irish pub to close down P Street.
Correct.
Could you help us understand where we're taking the public streets and the sidewalks there between 7th and 8th Street for a private business to essentially have a beer garden?
We're going to, at least in the meeting that I had last, it was going to have a 14-foot walkway right down the middle of the street that will have signs from both sidewalks pointing to that direction.
Mm-hmm. What about the vehicular traffic, though, that is shut down?
The one thing we're doing is we were talking about doing a day before is set up and then a day after is tear down, and now we've shortened that up to where we're going to come down. They're not going to put up any blockades or anything until I think 8 o'clock in the morning on the 17th, and then they would take stuff down starting late night on the 17th. So really the only time the street would be closed was the day itself, so there won't be any problem with traffic either before or after the event. It'll basically just be during the event while they put the tent up and then take the tent back down. And we're going to start after rush hour on the 17th just to make sure that that didn't hinder traffic during those hours.
So all the hoods along between 7th and 8th, or the parking meters will have to be hooded?
Yes, yes.
And could you address some of the costs and what you're paying to get access to the public right-of-way?
You know, I don't have that memorized, but it's you have to pay for each hood, and then I've got I believe that's $10 a day per hood, plus there's a fee for charged for those. Then there's a tent fee, there's a dance fee, there's a fees for the 6 police officers that are coming down for the day there too.
Are those off-duty?
Off duty, yes, yes,
Hiring those for the day?
yes, yes. Yep.
And what type of entertainment are you having?
We're having just Celtic music and dancers throughout the day. I believe there's 4 bands, and then there's also some Celtic dancers that'll be down there too.
What about the other Irish pub?
I don't believe they're having any outdoor bands or anything. They were talking about possibly having a DJ, but I'm not positive on that one.
What do we say to other business owners, other bar owners and so forth that say, well, gee, we want to shut down X street for some event in the future, and suddenly where this opens the doors, what is the appropriate policy that we should consider?
Well, probably the reason, for one thing, the reason why they want to do it. I think it's just a great fit because it's right on the edge of Canopy Street down there. I'm sure they probably have something going during that day too. I haven't heard anything, but I would expect them to be doing something down there in that area. I just think it's a good fit for that area. I don't know that it's a great fit for every other location in the city. I own some other bars that are right on O Street, and I understand we can't shut down O Street for that reason. But it's nice that it's right in that little nook right by the Canopy Street there.
What if your neighboring restaurants and bars want to shut down next week for another event?
You know what? I talked to every single one of them on the street, and they all seem to be fine with it. And I told them that after the event's coming, I'm going to come back around again and talk to them again and see if they have any, plus or minuses of what we should change, if anything. That's the other reason why we try to narrow down the day or the time that street was shut down, is just to help them out as much as possible. So, yeah, I think if they want to shut it down, I'm fine with that too. I think it's it's everybody's street, so they should have the chance just like I do.
What about the office tenants, their customers, their clients?
I talked to the owner of the building that's right there. I didn't get a chance to talk to their clients, obviously, but they didn't seem to have an issue there. The only thing I got as far as questions was, can I get a free beer? And that was about the extent of the wonder that they had. So everybody seems pretty cooperative about it.
So you talked to the owner of your building?
Of my building, they're Laszlo's, and right next door to me, they're the owners. They signed off as the owner and as the business right next door. I talked to the owner of I believe it's called the Cannery, that's right next door to mine. The owners of the Oven, which are is at the edge of the I think it's called the Cannery right there. Would you know that, the one that's right up between?
Maybe.
Yeah, up by 8th Street. They go all the way to 8th Street there.
Candy Factory.
Yep. Yes. And Rodizio, then and Burkholder also. Talked to all of them, and they were all fine with it. So.
Did you get any signed petition or anything?
Yes, I did. As part of the paperwork, you have to get everybody signed that's on that street. So.
Okay. And yet, Carl?
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Brian, for being here, and appreciate the conversation we had earlier this afternoon.
Yeah, no problem.
This is something unusual, and I think we're very reluctant to close city streets, obviously, for any purpose, and the Haymarket is particularly so because of the congestion already there, and so. I know this is something that has come up fairly quickly, and it's been somewhat frustrating, I think, for you to work through that and get everything in place. Again, just encourage you to work civilly with our staff and what
yes,
needs to happen.
I realize next time it's much better to start early.
Okay.
So I've learned that for sure.
All right. Thank you.
And to not shoot the messenger.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yes. Yes.
I mean, they're just doing their job.
Oh, yeah.
I understand it. We all get frustrated,
for sure.
but I
Yeah.
appreciate
No,
the understanding in the future that.
I've learned what
Very
not
good.
to do and what not to do.
Very good.
I'll support it.
Discussion? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody would like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
All right, if none, we can vote on this item. If there's a motion.
Okay.
Move to approve item 7.
Second.
Moved by Trent, seconded by Roy. Discussion? John?
As you might tell from my questions, I'm a little concerned about this. In fact, the applicant said, well, next time around, and I think we have to be real judicious when we're talking about our public streets, and we want to help businesses and so forth, but there's a lot of imposition this places, and you can suddenly, especially in the Haymarket area, it is a difficult traffic pattern, and maybe we need to come up with some areas like the festival space at the Pinnacle Bank Arena or something that could be rented by groups like this. And it's very hard for the groups too. You heard about all the permits and everything. But beyond this meeting, this application today, I'd like us to sit down and really review the policy on public streets, especially because we're talking about serving alcohol out there. I think this is nothing but putting a beer garden, and I just have some real concerns to disrupt businesses and so forth. And it's hard to say no to it when you talk to your neighbors, but I just have some real concerns on this, and I'd like to see us have a policy rather than have this come up one-on-one, and I think this is a good example to highlight why we do need to have that.
Any other discussion? I would only say I will be gone, but if we're going to have that discussion, then we have to include Rib Fest and a lot of other things that are out there in the middle of the street that we've done for a long, long time. I don't know how we pick one specific group or one specific area and say that doesn't apply to you. And so that I don't disagree that discussion needs to be had. I just don't know that it's fair to say we're not going to do it in the Haymarket, but we can do it other places. So with that,
If I could just clarify,
Yeah.
and I'm not just thinking the Haymarket, I'm thinking anywhere it's where you get single users like this. So, yeah, but those are good points that you made.
okay. Call the roll, please.
Camp,
No.
McChristensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-1. Next is our public hearing resolutions. Item 8 is accepting the report of new and pending claims against the city and approving disposition of claims set forth for the period of February 1st through the 15th, 2015.
Anybody who has a claim or would like to speak about a claim, here, now's your opportunity. Please.
All right, next would be item 9, approving the award of contract to the low bidder for the agreement between the City of Lincoln and the State Department of Roads for the South 56th Street project between Shadow Pines Drive and Old Cheney Road.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, Roger Feigert representing Public Works. You do have a motion to amend on this resolution. At the time that the paperwork needs to come in and schedule a resolution on the council, we actually had not taken the bids, but to stay on track with the state bidding process. So those bids were taken last week, and the motion to amend simply takes out the words low bidder and puts in Constructors, Inc., who was the only in low bidder on the contract. So we're here today to ask you to approve that resolution to allow the mayor to enter into that contract. I would say we did have just one bidder, Constructors, Inc., here in town. The actual bid was about 8.4% over our estimate. But I still think it's a responsible bid, a reasonable bid, considering the environment. If there were concern about that and moving ahead, clearly it's 2 to 4 months to turn back around and rebid the project and go work back through the state process. There's no guarantee there'd be more bidders. There's no guarantee that the numbers would go down. And clearly, we run the potential of losing a significant part of this construction season. We're already pressing things to have it open to one lane in traffic in each direction by fall and then finishing in 16. So Public Works does recommend this is a reasonable bid and would recommend your approval of that resolution, that bid award, and I'd answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Carl?
8.4% above, what is the bid?
Good question, Carl. I knew you would ask. The bid amount was $6,800,000 $876,253.62. So it is just under $533,000 over the engineer's estimate that was given to us.
Thank you. And this has been a long time coming. It's my understanding that there are federal funds involved with this project and different hoops, environmental hoops and other kinds of hoops, I suppose, to jump through. Can you just talk a little bit about what all has been needed to get us to this point?
Well, originally, this piece of 56th Street was done as part of the South and Southeast Fringe Studies, in which the city in the late 90s took on an environmental assessment of all those roads and came up with proposed plans for all those mile line roads. We did the environmental work. Well, then with the delay and increased, I think, insistence on following rules and regulations, those environmental documents don't survive forever. So as we pick back up 56, we had to go back through and reevaluate noise, air, all of the NEPA documents. And that process, as Mickey quite often says, we were using red dollars and to step through all those hoops and make sure that we were following NEPA and had followed all of the rules to be able to use that federal aid. It just added several years in there to do that. The right-of-way is basically procured. We're ready to move ahead. We've moved a number of the utilities out of the way. So we are poised and ready to start work on this. And you're right, it's been a long time coming. We put some more than minimal effort into some repairs on 56th Street last fall to try to hold it together. I think those served us fairly well over the winter, but certainly if we delay and can't move ahead, that would create some additional cost for next year too.
John?
Well, I'd concur with Mr. Eskridge that this has been a well, what you said, Mr. Feigart, a long time coming, because it's just a bottleneck there. Just to help our viewers and citizens understand, you mentioned you're ready to go ahead. Can you give us a rough timetable so that citizens can understand closures and construction time and so forth, so we can cause us few inconveniences and get the job done?
Thank you, Mr. Camp. Good question. Like I said, the bid opening was February 26th. That was last Thursday. We're here today to get your approval or not to move ahead. Tree removals will start in the area in March, later yet this month, to make sure that they get down before the migratory birds would move in and we'd have some other environmental issues. Would propose to have a public open house with the contractors so we can have all the property owners and the people that travel the area come together. That has not yet been announced because we didn't have a contractor yet on board, and we don't yet. That's probably in early April that we'd have that kind of a meeting so everybody can come in and talk about schedules and detours and how that would go. I would anticipate a notice to proceed to the contractor upon approval of the council here today of April 20th. That's what we're shooting for. Substantial completion for this project, which means 2 lanes of traffic open, 1 in each direction, is November 14th of 2015. So as we get in close to Thanksgiving again, at least having it open back up so 1 lane could go either way. Final completion is end of June in 2016. Clearly things like sidewalks, could be some street lights, some trail work, seeding, cleanup, those kinds of things would need probably to be done that following year. Okay.
Would you be able to put something on the Public Works portion of the city website with that timetable? And again, we all know that there can be weather conditions, but
yes,
that's great. And
yes,
just be able to refer people to that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for all your efforts.
And what do you expect the detours to be for this?
Oh, Chris Humphrey is sick today, so I apologize. Generally, for all the through traffic, folks that are coming from south of Pine Lake or north of Old Cheney, there'll be a signed detour route using one of the other arterial streets, whether that's 40th or whether that's 70th, and then going east and west before you go north and south. For the people that actually originate in the project area itself, the contractor will be required to maintain reasonable access to those businesses. So I think we kind of envisioned you would start and maybe do a third to a half of the project from one end and maintain access from the other way and side roads so folks could get in and out. The one thing that's really nice, once you get the contractor on board and have that meeting, Public Works, we think that we know how to build projects, but the contractors do this every day too. And they'll have their own way of trying to do some of that access and maintaining the ability for folks to get through there. And in the open house, they can explain to people how they propose to do that. Public Works obviously will need to buy in and make sure that we are satisfied that that's providing reasonable access for the businesses.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anybody like to speak to this item? Additional staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, next is item 10, approving a construction engineering agreement supplement number 3 between the city and Kirkham Michael and Associates for consultant compensation for additional work necessary to complete the Jamaica Trail North Phase 2 federal aid project.
Terry Genrick with Lincoln Parks and Recreation. We have had to provide additional funding for Kirkham Michael, who is actually the construction engineer on the Jamaica North project, since the project was not completed by the contractor on time. That contractor is in liquidated damages and went into it into a winter shutdown, and once the spring breaks, he'll be back to work to finish up on his work. But what happens is that the construction engineering firm Kirkham Michael had budgeted for the project to be finished on time, and because it went in to an extended period of time, then they're entitled to some additional funding for that. That funding actually is being paid for by the liquidated damages that are being assessed that company.
John.
Thank you, Mr. Gingrich. So on the liquidated damages, will that cover it 100%? Is
Yes.
there any extra there that covers the staff time that you and your colleagues have had to expend?
Yes, sir. More than that. But I'd like to remind everyone that this project has been going on for an extended period of time as well. In fact, 2008 is when it started. And all of the funding for it is coming from private donations and the Federal Highway Enhancement Fund project. So there are no tax dollars involved in this project.
Appreciate that clarification. I guess one of the concerns I have is we have a number of different types of projects around the city, and we've had some concern in the past where there have been delays, whatever, and we want to be equitable with the contractors and so forth. At the same time, they need to meet the commitment they make under the contracts, and so I appreciate the fact you're holding these folks to the terms of the contract, and it's just unfortunate they weren't able to complete last season, but I think we just need to follow that and make sure the contracts give the time they need up front. So.
Any other questions? One of the difficulties is deciding at what point you have a balance between let's get the liquidated damages out, or do you at some point eliminate people who may in the future want to apply or want to try to get a contract, and then you limit the number of people who can get contracts, and you don't you pay more per. So it's a delicate, and I know we all heard from people out on Old Cheney about the overrun, but it's a pretty delicate balance to try to make sure. And I appreciate you guys trying to make sure that we could recoup what Kirkham Michaels needs and what you guys need, Terry. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, next I'll call item 11, authorizing acceptance of the low bid to Bryn and Jones, which is in excess of 25% over the estimate for the 36th and Gladstone Paving District 2631.
I'm Erin Sokolik with Public Works. In July of 2013, a resolution was passed allowing Public Works to proceed with specs and plans for the paving district at 36 and Gladstone. It also stated that in the event that the actual price was above 25%, we would come back to you for approval to award that bid, and that's why we're here today. The preliminary estimate underaccounted for some of the utility work needed in the area, which would put us over the 25%. So the resolution before you would allow us to award the low bid and proceed with the project. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
I'm sure somebody will ask, can you give us the specifics of what those dollar-wise, what we went in looking at and what we have now?
The extra items or,
Just, if you say 25%, 25% of what? That's the question.
well, the engineering estimate on that was on the resolution in
Right.
2013 was $295,000. We're allowed 25% over, so that would put us for a total at $368,000 and some change. We got the bids come in, and based on that then, and the city is subsidizing some of the items. So if we count for the subsidy that the city is paying, the new total is $373,000 and some change. And again, that's still kind of an estimate because things are just based on quantities, but that's where we're at right now.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, and a further clarification, if you would, on this paving district, how much is being assessed, and what did the city originally expect to contribute, and what are you now saying that additional amount, will that all be borne by the city?
No, really just the amount that the city, is going to subsidize is some of the storm drainage work that needs to be done. The pipe is an 18-inch pipe, which is more kind of what the city would put in for their use, so it's kind of attributing to our system, so we're gonna pay for that. And there's wastewater work that needs to be done. The items were originally installed in the incorrect place, so the city is paying for that because it really isn't the responsibility of the owners to move that back. So the city is also subsidizing that portion.
So you're now at 373,000. Could you break out how much is the city expecting to pay and how much the citizens?
Yes. The city, based on the wastewater items and some of the watershed items that I mentioned, is almost $42,000 subsidy that the city is paying.
So would the balance 343,000 be assessed?
373,000 is what would be assessed. I've already taken off the 42,000 that the city would be subsidizing.
Okay, so we will assess out 100% of that 373,000?
Correct.
You have to come up here.
Sometimes on the assessments, we say the city will pay 15% or something. So you're saying though that whole 373
Yes.
will be assessed to the property owners?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anyone who'd like to speak to this item? Come right up, sir.
I'm Ron Beeman, B-E-E-M-A-N. I live at 3520 Gladstone, and I'm a property owner. And doing this project, it causes Gladstone to be closed at the end of 36th Street. And along with that, it only goes 2 blocks north and goes into a cornfield. And when they come to what I'm assessed, it comes to almost 2/3 of what my property is valued at. And I don't know how I can approve this myself. I have no solutions, but it's just, I've lived there for 35 years. And I'm a resident. There's 2 of us still there. And granted, it was light industry, but this is just ridiculous for 4 blocks. That's all I have.
John?
Mr. Beeman, would you mind sharing what your expected assessment would be?
Well, it's over $40,000. And just 10 years ago, we had a water district, and it was $14,000. And it's just, they're pricing me out of my house. And I can't sell my house for what, it's just ridiculous. Especially to go to a cornfield.
We'll get that answer. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Staff questions? Roger or somebody, can you speak to that issue at all? Or, sorry.
Which issue, sir?
Well, let's talk about what was the original intent of having the paving district? Who asked for the paving district? Somebody had to sign off on the paving.
Airs and Airs, most of that area is industrial, and they're looking to improve that and get that paved out there along their property and their yard.
Okay.
So the streets abutting their property, they were hoping to get paved, and this is a mechanism when you've got multiple ownership or diverse ownership.
Right.
This is a way to do that.
Ordinarily, the cost is not as substantial as this cost, however.
True, it's also an industrial area, so this is more than a residential street. I think we're proposing it to be a collector, commercial type street, so it's wider and it's thicker pavement, so the overall cost is higher than a residential street.
Okay, do you know how many properties there are out there, Roger, that are on that paving district?
I don't have that number in front of me. There are, Aaron's looking that up. I know there are 3 residential properties that are there. I mean, they're still zoned industrial, but they clearly are a current residential type use.
There are 7 different property owners
Okay.
in this area. So
And
it's
three residential and 4 commercial?
I know there's 2 residential, Mr. Beeman, and then his neighbors also residential, but I think the rest are businesses.
Do you have a map or a drawing of the lots that you might be able to show us?
Hold on. Yeah.
Please.
Roger, do we have any examples of other places where this has happened, where residential property owners have been asked to pay for commercial grade improvements? Certainly
Let's make
something
sure.
we'd hope the zoning code would
Right.
help us avoid.
Well, yes, and how it got zoned industrial, while their current use is residential, it clearly is zoned in industrial. What I don't know, Lorraine, is when that zoning change was made. The area in general is industrial in character, but it does put folks that are there living in an area, and over time things change, it puts them at a bit of a disadvantage, and maybe things have to evolve over time. So, can I think of a specific example? No, but we have had them in different places around town over the years. We certainly aren't doing as many of these assessment districts as we used to.
So this kind of shows the area here. This is Gladstone right here. So these 2 properties, this is Mr. Beeman's property, and he is on a corner property, which he does get a double assessment then. He's on 2 different sides. And then we're going to go up to 36th Street as shown here. And this is the different properties.
So who are some of the other owners? Could you identify who has what, please?
Yes, I may be able to do that. Number 1, can you see the number 1 right here? I don't know.
Hold on, just before we do that, Jeff, are we getting out here where maybe we shouldn't be?
Identify property owners, I think that's a public record.
Okay, very well. I just don't want to go to jail, thank you.
Nice new one.
Again.
Number 1 is south of Gladstone and east of 35th, and that's listed just as 3300 North 35th Street LLC.
Okay, gotcha. I gotcha.
Number 2 is J. Stanley.
Yeah.
Roger, where are we on timeframes here? Is it possible that we could at least entertain an idea of delaying this a week and let everybody, the property owners, sit down and see if there's a more equitable situation that, I mean, this
Works
is,
is under no pressure. Certainly, I believe Airs and Airs, and if there isn't someone here, I wish they had been.
given the uniqueness of the situation and the fact that,
There's no problem from our standpoint to delay.
and I don't know
Work
if there
with
would
you and
be,
the owners.
I don't know if that would be acceptable to the group, but it seems to me that Mr. Beeman has made a reasonable point that the benefit to him is maybe not as significant as the benefit to others.
I'll move a 1 week delay with continued public hearing, but let that motion stand until
Okay.
other people have a chance to ask questions.
Second.
Okay, second. By John. Before I ask you a question, answer your question, Larry, would it be possible for you guys to try to facilitate a meeting with those 7 people, the 7 owners, and see if they can come up with something that's reasonable? I understand heirs and heirs, I understand where it's valuable. I'm not saying we won't go forward if there's not some sort of agreement. I'm just asking if we could at least have that discussion to see where
That's
we are.
why we're back here with the
I
council's
appreciate it, Larry.
intent, that people know what things are gonna cost if they're
Thank you,
more than what they
Larry.
were before.
What would be the cost differential between a charge for residential street upgrade versus the commercial street? What would, for example, Mr. Beaman be expected to pay if this was completely a residential road?
I don't know if these numbers are
Residential
reflective of
standards.
the recent estimate. We did have that figured for the original estimate, but I don't know that we updated them for this new estimate.
That might be one
so.
thing to investigate.
We can look that up. We had a similar situation in northeast Lincoln, a paving district that failed. We had both residential and commercial properties zoned there, and we actually had transposed back the residential property to a residential rate. But, okay, we'll.
Would you happen to have the figures what it originally was, just to give us a rough percentage difference?
Yeah,
As Ms.
well, let me see.
Taylor Baird was asking.
Sorry, I think
you're-
I do.
Take your time. This one was a little different.
Questions?
Make sure I'm understanding the question. You're asked, what was our original estimate?
With the difference between a residential grade and the upgrade to the Collector Street industrial or?
You know, you're going from 6 or 7 inch pavement, 27 feet wide, to this is close to 35 or 39. So let us work that number up for you and get it back, rather than throwing something out here that's
Okay.
not
Jonathan,
not
did you have a
right.
question?
Oh, I just wanted to understand, the motion is what, for continued public hearing and action next week?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
If we are unable to facilitate a meeting with everybody within that week, are you willing to continue? Okay, we'll do our very
Let's-
best to do that.
Well, I think that's the intent.
Yeah.
Roger, is to see, and I'm appreciative of everybody saying, hey, look, we'll try to facilitate this meeting. I just think this one is worthy, before we go ahead and say, yes, let's do it, or no, we don't, I think it's worthy of some further discussion about how we make it, try to make it closer to fair and equitable. I'm not sure it'll be fair and equitable. We might try to make it closer, okay? All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Any discussion, more discussion on the motion? Do we need to do it now? You want to call the roll, please?
Yes. This will be to continue public hearing and action for 1 week to March 9th. Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Fellers.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
And thank you to my colleagues for bringing that forward. I appreciate it. I think it's fair. Let's at least get a look. Next item, please.
Next is our public hearing ordinance's second reading, item 12, amending section 10.02.254 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to parking services enforcement area to include portions of 19th Street, 21st Street, and Transformation Drive that bisect the University of Nebraska Innovation Campus.
Members of the City Council, David Landis, Urban Development Department Director. The City of Lincoln is now divided into two areas as far as parking enforcement is concerned. Downtown is controlled by the Urban Development Department and our vendor, in this case, Republic Parking. Outside downtown, it is enforced by the public service officers. There's a portion of the city that has been neither of their responsibilities, and that's the State Fairgrounds, who did their own enforcement, as a matter of fact. But now that's part of Innovation Campus. Innovation Campus has a developer on site developing that project, and it's Tetrad. Tetrad has come to the parking services, the Urban Development Department, said, we would like you to manage the enforcement of parking with respect to Innovation Campus for this reason. We do not want to use parking meter technology. We in fact want to use the cell phone apps that we've now begun to use in the downtown areas on our parking meters. We don't want the visual clutter, we want the look, and we also want the feel of an innovation campus that can do parking and enforcement without ever using a parking meter. So that's consistent with our look, our feel, and our agenda. There's a reason why we and only we could do this. In fact, it's not a choice between the two. We have the mechanisms that read the app so that when you do a parking meter by a cell phone app, it comes back to our enforcement people, and they know, because of the link up to their IT, that this is occupied in a paid-for stall, and therefore they know not to give a ticket. Our technology is not identical to the PSOs. They're of different generations, and they've been doing their business for a number of years with their stuff. It works fine because they provide us with tickets when they write tickets, and we can administer those, but they don't have the same technology to read the app and the cell phone mechanism. For that reason, Tetrad has asked us to assume that responsibility. We're prepared to do that. And this is the geographical boundaries that would allow us to assume that responsibility. I've also asked Wayne Mixdorf here, the Director of Parking Services, particularly if you have any questions about the IT elements of what I'm suggesting, since anything beyond an off-on switch is over my head. Other questions?
John.
No, thank you. Would it be correct to assume that you're looking at a cluster box type situation so that you can let the patrons?
No, sir, that's incorrect. What we're looking at is using our Passport mobile payment app. We would install signs indicating that to the public, and they would simply utilize that, download that app, or access it by phone and make their payment that way.
There is no parking meter. That's the point. And even the cluster box.
That's correct,
Councilman.
It's similar to what we have in the downtown area, where people are able to park at any of the metered spaces and utilize that app.
Okay. What if the downtown meters do give you the ability to put coins or credit cards in there? What happens if somebody comes and they're got gray hair like I do and maybe don't know how to do the app? They fumble with their, even they have a cell phone or whatever. What do they do on parking?
Go ahead, Wayne. Give me.
What we're talking about in this situation is parking on the on city streets, the 3 city streets that are here. The people that come to these buildings to park will always have access to the private parking that's established there, which would allow them to pay by coin or currency at their pay stations.
So there's an alternative then for that?
Correct.
Okay, well, that's good.
But not at these stalls. These stalls will be app only.
That's correct.
And that's their sense of innovation.
So if you don't know how to run the app, you don't belong there.
Right, which is why I'm going to park in the Valentino's parking lot and walk.
But you also have a call-in number available, correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
And I mean, that, while it may take a few more minutes than the app, works just perfectly.
It actually doesn't take very much longer. It really
No.
does take seconds longer.
Yeah.
You can do it by text. You can do it by IVR or
Yeah.
voice recognition.
Yeah, I've done it both from the call-in number and the app, and they work slick. The great thing is that they give you a reminder when your time is up.
Absolutely. It also allows you to print out your receipt.
Exactly.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, it's really easy to use. I don't think it's and most people have their phones with them now, so
The man who's under 50.
And doesn't have a flip phone.
the phrase "so easy a caveman can do it" comes to mind. But it's really easy to use. I mean, you just dial in the number and it walks you right through it like you were paying for something over the phone. I mean, it's really easy to use.
You have to
Tells
realize
exactly what
we
you need.
lost Dr. Spock the last couple of days, so we're in trouble.
It's not good.
How do the finances work on this? And I'm thinking in terms of the parking enterprise fund and so forth. You're now using staff to check these. What type of portion of the parking fee do you get, or does that all go to the city like the rest of the meters?
The situation in this case is that it is the standard $1 an hour. There is a 25-cent convenience fee per parking session, and the city does get a percentage of that. That is actually 3/4 of that does go to the vendor for providing us with the software support for the system. But we do recoup a percentage of that, which we apply to our credit card charges.
Excuse me 1 second.
Certainly.
So I put it in, I pay $1 on this app. You're saying 75 cents of that goes to the software vendor?
No, sir. The dollar, 100% of that dollar comes to the city for that parking fee. There is an additional 25-cent convenience fee for using this particular service per parking session, however long that session might be. Of that
An hour,
25
I pay
cents.
$1.25.
Exactly. Of that 25 cents, a portion goes to the vendor for us to pay for the software support that we get from them, and a portion of that comes to the city, which we apply to our credit card service charges.
So it sounds like the 25 cents really is eaten up by the vendor and the credit card charge?
In general.
So where do you get compensated to pay for your extra personnel, vehicles, time, and so forth to monitor this?
Well, in this case, we're talking about 130 new parking spaces. So any revenue that's generated by these parking spaces would be additional revenue that we would be generating. We're not anticipating using any additional personnel. We will manage this with the existing ambassador staff. We're prepared to handle it in that fashion. Same thing with our vehicles and any other consumables.
But out of that, if I'm not correct, your staff and so forth are paid out of the parking enterprise fund?
That's correct. They're paid, they're a contractor, we certainly pay them.
Okay. Whereas the parking meter revenue generally is nearly all goes to the city general fund.
A good deal of it goes to the
Like 1.845 million.
That's right. A good deal of it goes to the city's
And
general fund.
you only generate $2 million a year anyway. So basically, I'm just trying to see where the parking enterprise fund is kept whole with this additional responsibility.
Well, I do understand. It is an additional responsibility, but it will generate a certain amount of money. The money that is currently going to the general fund is fixed for the next 2 years. So any revenue generated by this during that period of time would be additional.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Anybody would like to speak to this item? Additional staff questions? Next item, please.
Next, I'll call items 13 and 14 together. They're approving the Swanson-Russell redevelopment agreement between the city and B&H Enterprises relating to the redevelopment of property located at 1202 P Street for construction of a new approximately 12,000 square foot office building, and authorizing the issuance of tax allocation bonds with a total not to exceed the amount of $2.4 million for the City of Lincoln Swanson-Russell redevelopment project located at 12th and P Street.
Members of the council, David Landis, Urban Development Department Director. And the applicant in this case, and a project that has moved through the Urban Design Committee with kudos on the designs of the project, moved through the Planning Commission, universally and unanimously approved, as it is consistent with the downtown master plan in a number of different ways. Swanson-Russell's been in Lincoln for a long time. They've done a lot of great work, and they want to expand. That expansion caused them to reflect on where they should be. And they do have facilities in Omaha, and they received a relatively attractive package to extend that lease agreement in Omaha. They compared it to what they could do in Lincoln. And they said to themselves, this is the land that we now own, and this is our existing building. And one of the things that we could do is that we could build on our own existing land. Now, when I say their own existing land, there is a transformation of the ownership. Swanson-Russell is a essentially tripartite organization And that changes with respect to the amount of land necessary for this project. So this is the new area, and it looks like this. Existing building, entryway to the parking area, double parking underneath, 2 floors of a new building here, a somewhat of movement in the landscaping out here, a better projection here on parking, the arrival of a parallel parking space here and the loss of an angled parking stall there, so we're even on parking. The total amount of the project is $2.4 million. Of that, the 2 new partners who will own this building will be providing about $2 million, and this agreement produces about $374,000 to assist that. So, what's happened is the 3 people who own this building have transformed into buying out one of the 3 so that this can then be built by 2 of those partners in this location. And the money that is to be collected and dispersed under the TIF project includes site preparation. This is now a surface parking lot. Streetscape, these changes along here on this street, facade enhancement and architectural building connection, particularly this area of the building. In fact, in the very first form, when they were considering this, it did not have this connective tissue. I will tell you that the Urban Design Committee found that the most compelling part of the project. More windows, more light, more eyes on the street, and a more continuous frontispiece. So instead of ending the building here with this view of the parking lot, this masks that, and it adds this connective tissue between the 2 buildings. Site acquisition is essentially the buying out of one partner for $45,000 for this area of land. Let's see, there are energy enhancements, and I guess that I think summarize it. The developer is here, Swanson Russell is here, and I would say that we're pretty darn glad that they're staying in Lincoln and expanding here. This is a place where, if it all works out, we kick Omaha.
Plus Gus Swanson won't turn over in his grave.
Question.
Okay. Larry.
It is a beautiful project, and it is great to see density in downtown, redevelopment in our downtown, and I'm glad that the Urban Design Committee was so in favor of the project design. I do have a question about the site acquisition piece of the TIF. Typically, site acquisition is a justifiable cost with TIF. Oftentimes, sites are blighted to the extent that the market is not producing any viable purchaser, or the property is so dilapidated on the site that the person who wants to redevelop wants to tear down the property, but the cost to do so is somewhat prohibitive. So those are a couple of reasons we often see site acquisition and TIF costs. But in this case, we don't really have those conditions, and while it's just a minor portion of the overall TIF, it is a portion, and it's really the people who are there already own it, correct? I mean, please help me
Sure.
understand this kind of site acquisition justification.
This land is now owned by 3 people.
Can you put the drawing up again, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Make sure I have this right here. That is-
Nathan Guernsey with Woods and Aiken Law Firm, 301 South 13th Street.
Do I have the proportions right? This is the portion that will be owned by B and H.
Enterprises LLC.
That's different than SRA, although there is an overlap of membership in this extent. 2 of these people are also 2 of the 3 people that are here.
And this is owned by SRA Enterprises LLC. And what will happen is the real estate will be distributed out of SRA Enterprises LLC. And we'll have to purchase from the one member his ownership interest in the land. And so the 2 members that are staying apart they're just going to contribute their land without cost. But the one individual that's not going to be a part of the addition will have to buy his land or his 1/3 interest in the land from him. And a market value was determined based off assessed value. I'm not talking in the microphone, sorry. A market value was determined based off assessed value and the square footage, dividing up how much square foot was being purchased in that back parking lot and dividing that amount by 1/3. And that's the amount that's being negotiated to purchase out that 1/3 interest from the partner that won't be involved into the B&H project. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question?
I'm confused. I don't mind admitting it. So let's say there are three partners, A, B, C, they own the existing corner, is that correct?
They own that, correct? They're all members in SRA Enterprises
Okay.
LLC.
Yes, I guess
Okay.
we should do this. SRA, that's right.
Well, I like the A, B, well, okay, SRA, okay, 3 letters anyway. And 2 of those letters own the parking lot, is that correct?
They will. They don't yet. That's part of our
Owns
site
the parking
acquisition.
lot now?
SRA Enterprises.
Oh, it owns everything?
It owns everything right now, correct. Yes. And so what has to happen is the developer, B&H Enterprises, has to acquire the parking lot. And in order to do that, they will be purchasing it from the 3 owners of SRA Enterprises. And of those 3 owners, one of them will not be involved in the second project. And so we've taken the value of the parking lot, divided that into thirds, and we're going to pay the one member that's not a part of the B&H project or the new project, pay them that 1/3 value. And then the
Who
other.
will own the original? Is that still going to be
It'll
those
still
3?
be owned by SRA Enterprises, yes, which
3.
is owned by 3 different members, correct.
Oh, so you still have 3, and instead of 3 over here, you have 2 on the parking. Okay, I understand it.
Okay.
What happens to the old building? I'd heard that might be sold, the old original, or is that
The
part
original
of-
building has been sold. Swanson Russell currently is a tenant allowed to use that until such time as they would complete their expansion, hopefully in the parking lot behind their existing building.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Come right on up.
Okay. I'm back. As I already mentioned, Nathan Guernsey with Woods and Aiken Law Firm and serve as counsel for the redeveloper. I have Brian Boucher with me, who is a principal with Swanson Russell and with B&H Enterprises. And we're here to offer some comments in support of the project, as well as answer any questions you may have. And we have the rest of our team here. We have Dave Hansen is here, who's also a principal with Swanson Russell and B&H Enterprises. And we have 2 individuals from Clark Enderson, in case you stump us with any questions, Tim Gergen and Jeff Chadwick. As you know, the plan amendment for the Swanson Russell redevelopment project was before you on February 2nd. And thank you for approving that. Today, we're looking at the redevelopment agreement that's the same project, just fleshing out a little bit more detail on that project. I know you were provided a copy of the redevelopment agreement about a week ago, and there's been discussion since then, and perhaps another draft of that was circulated in the last day or so that removed what I call the privatized public bidding process. I just want to let you know that our position would be we would prefer to see the original redevelopment agreement that we negotiated with the city approved. We think there are some benefits in there that, from a streamlining standpoint, it's essentially the same process that the purchasing division uses, only there's some efficiencies that can be gained not only in time, but also in cost. And so, that being said, we don't want to lose sight of the forest for the trees. We are very much interested in seeing Swanson Russell move forward with this project. Frankly, all parts of the city, urban development, the mayor's office, and the city staff have been great to work with and have really gone to bat in putting together a proposal that will work out for Swanson Russell to expand here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And just wanted to let you know we will be flexible and we would be willing to move forward under either approach, whether that be with the privatized public bidding process or without, though our preference would be to retain that ability to have some efficiencies and move forward more quickly with the bidding process that can be done oftentimes more quickly with a private group. With that, I'll let Brian offer any comments he has.
Good afternoon. Brian Boucher, Brian Boesche, 1202 P Street. And I'm here today on behalf of my partner, Dave Hansen, who is here in the audience, and the 140 people that represent Swanson Russell, our agency. Just as a very quick background, we are a marketing and advertising, marketing communications and advertising agency. We've been part of the Lincoln downtown community since 1962 and have very much enjoyed being a part of downtown. And our agency has had the good fortune to be very successful over the last few years, and with our growth, in order to sustain and maintain that growth, our current space is not very conducive to that. We do feel the need to expand. We have looked at a number of alternatives, one of which was using our Omaha office, where we have 140 people, and about 40 of those are up in Omaha. The other 100 are here in Lincoln. And we could look at transferring some of those jobs to Omaha. But our preference, as we worked through the different alternatives and our own interests, our preference was to remain here in Lincoln. And getting involved with this kind of a project, we think, is a great thing for our company. It's a great thing for the city. It's a great thing to be able to hopefully keep those jobs here in Omaha, or here in Lincoln, excuse me. We have about 95% of our revenue now comes from outside the state of Nebraska, and so we think it's important to be able to keep pumping that money into both Lincoln and Omaha. So we have had a great relationship with the mayor's office so far, and with urban development, and working with Jeff Chadwick at Clark Anderson, and we would just very much like to push this project forward. We'd ask that you approve the financing, and we're ready to get moving on it, and would like to hopefully break ground yet late this spring. Available to answer any questions that you might have.
John?
Yeah, you start on your breaking ground date. When would you like to be completed with this?
Our hope is to be done by February of 2016, I believe. So, depending on when we can get started and weather situations and all, but we'd like to be hopefully first quarter of 2016.
Any other questions? Thank you,
Yeah.
gentlemen.
I'm sorry, Carl. Thank you. It's kind of a random question, but a few months ago we completed the P Street project. That have any impact on your decision?
We think we love our location, and we've been very happy with the P Street project. I sit on the corner of 12th and P, and I got to look out my window each day and see all the activity going on down there, and I think it's been a great thing. And we believe that the project we've shown here today will only make that whole corridor and P Street even more valuable and more attractive to people coming downtown. So we've been very supportive of that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for your long-term involvement in the Lincoln community, and the building. How's I call it the new building. How old is?
We built that in 1998.
Okay, well, longer than I would have thought. And this addition also looks great. And the two will be connected.
Yes, the diagram here.
Quite tell if that was on the east or the west or both.
This area here is the connection point between the two buildings.
Okay.
This will be 2 floors of about 5,000 square feet each, and it will house about 60 people is what we're planning. Right now we're planning to move 30 people, so we have room for growth of another additional 30 people that hopefully would take place over the coming years.
Excellent. And also you're not losing much parking, maybe a couple of stalls, as I understand.
Actually, the parking is pretty much staying the same. I think we have 21 spots there, and we may end up having 20 spots in this scenario with an allowance for handicap.
Okay. Great. And one of my best friends, one of the best people in life I've ever encountered, was a former employee of yours who passed away 8 or 9 years ago, I think. So Good people. Thanks.
Questions? Questions? Well, thank you for your long service to Lincoln. And let's not let the discussion over the bidding process make this anything different. You just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. This too shall pass.
Timing
Thank
is
you.
everything.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just a minute, Mike.
Yeah.
Anybody else who'd like to discuss this item? Staff questions?
This moves into the topic that is relevant, but as I think the chair recognizes, a modest, smaller piece of a much grander canvas, which is, I think, a very good city building project. And that is the private use of the public bidding process. Our law department and the urban development department agrees we like that idea. We've put it in a couple of other agreements. It's in this agreement. However, it has produced some controversy and some confusion. And this underlying tool is very important to maintain the public confidence. We work at that. There's always concerns about programs in which the city draws boundaries and helps peer and maybe not there. And so for that reason, we said over the weekend, look, we're not pushing this idea. It doesn't have to be here. In fact, we're going to offer an amendment to take it out. That doesn't express our preference. We believe in what we did, and we believe it to be legal. And one of the reasons we believe it to be legal is because it mirrors exactly what the charter and the practices are that are required for the city to do. Our nomination is to offer that motion, as we said we would, to have it taken out of the project. However, what we said was, look, we're going to take that out, or we'd offer to take it out, until such time as there is a public forum to discuss the issue. This isn't that forum. People didn't know this was here. I don't think they were aware of it. I don't think the development community knew to come. So our nomination is that this motion that we've offered, and perhaps the motion that I believe Councilman Fellers is interested in, might be the basis upon carrying over the hearing till next week. Notice will be out to the world. We've been on the TV. There'll be some press coverage. The development community will certainly know that fact. And next week's hearing could serve as that public discussion of the merits or demerits of the idea, and the community would be able to take a limited time, but at the same time, one that doesn't interrupt the building plans of Swanson Russell, that would allow the council to act judiciously next week and act on the underlying agreement without causing their delay. So that would be our nomination for how to proceed in this case. But of course, this is in the hands of the council now, is it not?
All right. I'll expand on that a little bit, and I'll make the motion to continue this items 13 and 14 with public hearing until next week, and have action next week as well. And I will also.
Let's do that first.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jonathan. Now go ahead.
Well, I mean, it is continuing the hearing is fine. I mean, and that's all we're doing.
Yeah. In order to have a discussion on,
right,
I guess both amendments, one that strips out the private bidding process to have a public bidding process, and then I have an amendment that I've had the law department draft that I've spoken to a bunch of other members about, I think everybody, in increasing the transparency in this process, having a statement that all the bids shall be open to potential bidders, the date at which sealed bids will be received and the location where the bids will be open. The bids will be publicly opened and read in the presence of all bidders who want to attend, where the plans will be examined, that the redeveloper has the right to reject all bids, and the city representative will be present when the bids are open, as well as have the urban development department and the purchasing department post the bids on their website.
Is there a second?
I'll make that motion next week.
Right.
Okay.
We just ask I believe the amendment as provided by the administration and Mr. Feller's amendment will both be posted online with this item for the public
Yes.
to look at.
Yeah.
Yes. We need to give a public process with some fair notice, and it can't go on, I think, forever.
So we're just
A
going to
timely way to do that.
extend hearing till next week and vote next week.
And what we want to do as far as the redevelopment agreement goes in respect to the bidding options.
Which I think
Which
would,
won't affect their project
Right.
at all, because we'll still be doing action on that. It's just
Correct.
what the public tells us and how we feel we want to move forward with respect to this. And I think then we'll have an idea of further discussions with respect to redevelopment agreements and this type of bidding project process and how we should move forward.
okay. Carl?
Yeah, and I'm supportive of this. I think certainly TIF is under scrutiny somewhat statewide right now, and it makes sense that we do step back if for a brief moment to make sure that what we're proposing doing is not problematic and indeed is a responsible way to do it. So very supportive of it.
Any other question, any other comments? Okay, call a question, or let's vote on the delay, please.
Camp?
Not here.
Okay. Christensen?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Emery?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Item, please.
Next, I'll call items 15, 16, and 17. They are all related to the 23rd and O Street redevelopment agreement with Eustis LLC relating to the redevelopment of property generally located between 23rd Street and the north-south alley between 23rd and 25th Streets and N and O Streets for renovation of a large retail building. Amending the fiscal year 14-15 CIP to authorize and appropriate $450,000 in TIF funds for the 23rd and O Street project, and authorizing the issuance of tax allocation bonds with a total not to exceed the amount of $450,000 for the 23rd and O Street project.
Mr. Landis.
Thank you very much, Councilman. David Landis, Urban Development Department Director, and the applicant in this case. This is the Office Max building on O Street.
Bless you.
Cracked surface parking lot. I would have to say an imposing sign, occupying a good deal of the visual perspective as you look down the street. It looks like this from the back end. This is what Elliott School looks out and sees from the back end. And a little bit more panoramic view of that back end vision is here. This building is filled with asbestos. This building is built on a culvert and could not be built a second time today because you don't build buildings on our public works. So this project that rehabilitates this area meets downtown design standards with respect to its parking, takes down the sign that's there, takes out the asbestos by gutting the building, puts this as the back end of the building on the Elliott School side, and provides these trees on O Street and on 23rd Street as buffer to the community, and then provides a medical facility, including a community health clinic, is the attacking of blighted and substandard conditions and redeveloping city's resources, and in this case, the private property. Total project cost for gutting that building and doing that work is $4.2 million. Our share of it is $450,000. The acquisition of this property and this asbestos-filled building was about $1,600,000. They would like assistance to the point of $450,000 to assist with that. This is in the B4 area. It will be subject to downtown design standards, and the large box culvert over the building will still be there. But this land will continue to be used and in a much higher, I think, social value with respect to the medical facilities that will be there, and I think in a much more attractive way that builds the city very successfully. The developers here, as is their representatives, and they would be happy to speak to you about it. If you'd like to know more about the tenants, they could be able to do that, but essentially these will be the owners of the land, and then they have long-term tenants that are in this area. This too went to the Planning Commission and was reported out unanimously. Are there questions I can answer for you?
Questions? Jonathan?
No, it's a very attractive design. You did show the back of the building. Are those real windows or are those fake windows?
I don't think I meant to show you windows. Oh,
Yeah.
Well, yes, there are. That's supposed to be the back of the building.
Yes.
And our developer is here. If they added windows that they intend to take out, let's find out right now. Any other questions?
Mr. McComb, and looks like it's on his way here.
Larry has a, do you have something for Dave?
Let's get this one answered first, and we'll go to the next one. Oh, go ahead.
I'm Jeff Chadwick, architect with Clark Anderson Partners, working on this project. Yes, they are real windows.
Wow. So you're cutting into the...
Yes, they'll be on this facade. They'll be, or I guess where they're shown here.
Okay.
Windows onto the inside. There'll be some windows along what is going to be the break room along that, which is the old loading dock for the Safeway.
Okay.
And then what doesn't show up on the west facade, looking onto the street, there'll be windows there as well.
So there won't be holograms.
Yeah, no, that's very nice. No, we've had some, even some city projects where we've put in fake windows. They still look, they're better than a blank wall.
Yes,
but
they are.
Where it wasn't practical, and I appreciate that you were able to make this work. That's very nice.
Just this project and the one previous brought to mind because of their street trees, whether or not we're giving guidance to these projects to not plant ash trees. Have we put that in writing, or are people getting that message?
Wait a second. Here. Don't plant. We have given that signal.
Problem solved.
So moved.
Thank you.
Larry, that may be a better question for Lynn and Forestry. I'm pretty sure that they're, but we'll make
I
sure.
hope so.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, see that.
Thank you. Anybody who'd like to speak to these three items, you're welcome to come up and speak.
The ash tree message.
Good to know.
But I think you also should know that all the street trees are controlled by the Parks Department, no matter where they are.
Right. Sure
They will tell us what to plant.
They're careful.
We'll like it. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, Mark Hunziker appearing on behalf of Eustis LLC, the redeveloper. This project is to renovate 23,000 square foot former Office Max, former Safeway building, which I believe is somewhere around 65 years old. And as Dave pointed out, is situated on top of a major drainage culvert, which takes overflow from the Antelope Creek. The project will house a new partnership between Lutheran Family Services and the People's Health Clinic, and will provide both mental health services as well as physical health services in a combined setting, in as much as it's been determined that as many as 68% of adults with behavioral health problems also have physical health problems that are part and parcel to that. And nearly a third of those with physical health conditions also have behavioral health problems. So the combination of the two will be beneficial. The location is central, it's accessible to bus lines, and is walkable from a large portion of the central part of the community. We hope to get started on this project immediately, and we hope to be in the building by December. There is a possibility that exists of a second project which would involve an addition to this building on the east side to house another compatible nonprofit user, although those discussions are in what I would call preliminary stages at this point. So just so you know, we are at least contemplating a phase 2 to this project before we even commence phase 1. So I'll try to answer any other
Okay.
questions you may have.
Any question for Mr. Unsker? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody who'd like to speak to this item? Additional staff questions? Next item, please.
All right, we'll go on to public hearing ordinances, third reading, item 18, creating Sidewalk Improvement District 1189 for the purpose of constructing the sidewalks generally located at 6844 Lawrence Circle and assessing the costs thereof against the benefited property.
Anthony Reiling, Anthony, Reiling, Reiling. I'm speaking on behalf of my mom, Dolores T. Reiling, and Dolores T. Revocable Trust. Brief statement, and then just give you a proposal of what we'd like to do to solve the problem. But I do want to try to represent some of my mom's thoughts on this, because she cannot be here today.
What's your mom's address, Anthony?
Mom's address is 6844 Laurent Circle.
Thank you.
My address is 2121 Herrell, Herel Street, here in Lincoln.
Thank you.
You bet. Again, just a brief statement, and then on with our proposal. If you could just take just a moment. My mother would have liked to have been here today, but to represent herself, but her physical health would not allow her to attend. Mentally, my mom is fully capable of making decisions, and she is fully aware of the facts and concerns in this matter. My mother and our family are disappointed in the neighbors that did not come forward and talk with us. In fact, to this moment, we still don't know who filed the complaint. The Homeowners Association took a very neutral approach to this, which was disappointing. The mayor, who decided to use an executive order to force an action on an 86-year-old woman on a fixed income with no borrowing capabilities. My mother agrees with the need and the benefits of having a sidewalk on the property, but we argue that she should not have been held responsible to pay for it. However, we have exhausted all non-legal avenues and simply do not have the financial means or the energy to fight this any longer. We understand now that there may not have been anything that the mayor or this council could have done given the circumstances of this issue and the timing of the actions. We simply will yield to the knowledge of the mayor and this council in this matter and trust in the fact that there was no other option but to take this action to ensure the sidewalk was completed. We would be remorse, however, if we did not add that a lack of a appeals process for the mayor's executive orders leaves out the option of a more civil compromise between the city, the property owner, the neighbors, the homeowners association, the developer, and any other interested parties. Made it very difficult for us to do anything else. We would personally like to thank Roger Feigard for his professionalism throughout this process in representing the city's concerns while balancing the emotional and real concerns of my mother and our family. Our proposal today is just simply to commit to completing the sidewalk within the specifications of the city at a cost no more than to exceed the $5,200. We will need time to raise the necessary cash, as my mom has no cash reserves. We would ask that the council approve a completion date no earlier than July 1st of 2015. We have a verbal commitment of partial funds from Bob Hampton, which is a step in the right direction towards the funding of this project. We will start the process of receiving bids within 3 weeks of the council's approval of the request. That's it.
Questions? Hold that thought. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Roger, you want to do next?
Yes, sir.
Other questions, for Roger? I'll ask one if you don't have one, but how about that date? That puts us fairly close or fairly tight to get the sidewalk in before school starts, correct?
Yeah, when schools start? Middle of August
Middle of
now?
August.
It's about 6 weeks.
Mid-August.
Clearly, we want to give them time to try to do that themselves. I think that clearly is the most fiscal prudent thing for the family. We can take some interim steps to be prepared without spending a bunch of time and effort, maybe using an existing contract, and would be ready to mobilize and move in. Under these circumstances, I think Public Works is willing to accept that July 1, but would defer to the council.
Well, I don't know that we would vote on the proposal anyway. I think we would just vote to put in the paving district, and then that will be a decision between you and Mr. Reiling, or Public Works and Mr. Reiling, about how to make sure that when school starts, there's a clear message from the neighbors that when school starts, they want sidewalk in there. And the fact is that this was ordered in over a year ago. So we actually should have had it in by this school system, but we didn't. So I think I don't know that we necessarily need to take action on the proposal in and of itself.
If you approve the assessment district and you're indicating to Public Works that it needs to be in by July 1st, by the property owner, Public Works will move ahead and see that it's in before school. We'd accept that.
Okay.
That direction.
Thank you very much. Anybody else who'd like to speak to this item? Next item, please.
That concludes our public hearing portion. We can move into the voting session. Public hearing resolutions. Item number 8 is the report of claims against the city for February 1st through the 15th, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion. Call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Fellers.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 9 is approving the award of contract to the low bidder for the agreement between the city and State Department of Roads for the South 56th Street project between Shadow Pines Drive and Old Cheney Road, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by John.
We do have a motion to amend number 1 on this one.
Move the motion amend number 1.
Second.
Moved by Trent, seconded by Jonathan. Discussion on the motion. Trent, you want to explain the motion, please?
Basically, just some language changes.
They didn't know who won the bid process when they put
We
that
now know
together.
who the contractor is. We
Yeah.
didn't when it was
Correct.
introduced, so this adds that name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this takes out whoever
Lowest
might be low
bidder
bidder
and
and
inserts
inserts
Constructors.
Constructors, Inc.
I appreciate the help. I thought I had that motion, but I did not.
You did, you did.
I gave it to Doug, yeah.
All right. Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Fellers.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Discussion now on the main motion.
Yeah, I'd just like to say it's great to have this coming. I appreciate my colleagues and everything in Public Works and everybody's done. This will be good for Lincoln and its whole transportation network.
Any other I would only say that if history is a guide, there will be some pain before we get this all done. So we ask the patience of those who will at some point have a very nice roadway in on 56th Street, but it may be painful before we get there. Call a roll, please.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Fellers.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Next is item 10, approving a construction engineering agreement supplemental number 3 with Kirkham Michael for completion of the Jamaica Trail North Phase 2 federal aid project, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Second by John. Discussion? Call roll, please.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge, Fellers.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 11, public hearing and action was continued to March 9th. Public hearing ordinances second reading, item number 12. Public hearing ordinances second reading are items 12 through 17. Public hearing ordinances third reading, creating Sidewalk Improvement District 1189 in Lawrence Circle, introduced by Fellers.
Do we move it? How do we, what do we do here?
It is moved.
Oh, it is moved?
Yeah. Yep.
You want me to move it? So moved.
Second, and then I'd make an amendment.
Second by John.
Yeah, second. And do we want to continue public hearing a week to get something in order, or just move to then defer it?
Are you talking about 18?
We're talking about 18.
Yeah.
We're talking about 18.
This is Lawrence
No, that's
Circle.
the one we
We
just
were-
had the discussion.
I think basically we're ready to go.
That's correct. We're
And then-
moving the pavement district. Public Works will try to work with them. What the decision was made that we're gonna have sidewalk in by the time children go to school.
But if he gets it in, then we don't do it.
It's between him, that's
Got it.
between, all we're doing is making sure that the sidewalk gets put in one way or another. They can discuss how it gets put in from that point.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Call roll, please.
This is on the main motion. Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Ordinances third reading, item 19, authorizing the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds of the city in a principal amount of not to exceed $6.3 million to refund the city's outstanding general obligation storm sewer bonds, Series 2005, and related matters, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion. Call roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 20 is authorizing the issuance of sanitary sewer revenue refunding bonds of the city in a principal amount of not to exceed $13.5 million to refund the city's outstanding sanitary sewer revenue bonds, Series 2005, and related matters, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Seconded by Lorian. Larian, excuse me, didn't come out quite right, sorry. Next, just call the roll, please.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 21 is authorizing the issuance of solid waste management revenue bonds of the city in a principal amount of not to exceed $7,060,000 and related matters, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion. Call the roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge,
Yes.
Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Item 22 is authorizing the city to enter into a lease purchase transaction with Union Bank in a principal amount of not to exceed $3.4 million to purchase and install light poles and related equipment, such as light fixtures, wiring, and other items necessary to complete the installation of new streetlights in the city and related matters, introduced by Fellers.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion. Call the roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge, Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Resolutions first reading, we have one item, 23. Ordinances first reading are items 24 through 29. On items 28 and 29, we did have a request to delay public hearing to March 16th.
Oh, okay. Well, so to delay public hearing or to have first reading again on that day? They want public hearing
They
on
want
that.
public hearing on March
Oh,
16th.
Okay. I move that we schedule second reading, public hearing, on items 28 and 29 on March 16th.
Second.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion. Call the roll, please.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook, Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge, Fellers,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0. Our pending list is just one item, number 30.
I'm not going to take it off this time. We'll leave it there.
Not a meeting.
I would move for adjournment of the meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Trent. Discussion, call a roll.
Camp,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Emery,
Yes.
Eskridge, Fellers.
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
We are adjourned.
Or she usually says.